All right. Hello, everyone. How's it going? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Make sure to drop where you're joining me and Mr. Olivier from the Outbound Catalyst about this cool little live session that we're going to do today. For those of you that have checked the Clay Club, it's probably not going to be as aggressive as the workflows that are being showed there, but truthfully, there are a lot of stuff that are happening around the GTM landscape at the moment with all the cloud code hype and those extensive ecosystem plays. So today I managed to bring you guys someone who managed to see through all of the BS. And that being said, Olivia, thank you very much for joining us today, man. It's my absolute pleasure to share the stage for the fourth time with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Georgie. Pleasure is likewise for sure. Happy to talk about this still very hot, relevant, and misunderstood topic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just want to see really quickly if we are live on LinkedIn. Yes, we are live. Okay, awesome. Cool. That being said, guys, I know that we promised you to show how do you actually build evergreen plays on Autopilot and things like this. But beforehand, I do believe that it's very important to share the base principles around, hey, what is actually signal-based outbound and how do you need to treat this as part of your go-to-market strategy? Because there are so many things out there, as mentioned, right? And really quickly about myself, I've been in the leadership or executive shoes from the age of 19, been doing growth for VC-backed companies and bootstrap companies, including Signalbase, we're trying to bootstrap. And last year, I had the absolute pleasure to create a community for vetted go-to-market practitioners, which close off in a nice manner by creating a conference. And honestly, I wouldn't be able to talking about signals if we didn't fuck up by sending too many stale messages without any relevance. So that's why Signal Base was born. And that's why I got so curious about talking to other seasoned practitioners about designing those go to market engines. And we have a podcast, so make sure to check it out. Olivia, I do believe that this will be our recording by one way or another, but let's see how that will move down the line. All right. That being said, guys, share what is your biggest signal based myth at the moment that you have been hearing from the landscape? Is it the fact that someone is commenting under your profile, the all Hermes agents and things like this, or it's something that you've been seeing but trying to reduce yourself from all of the noise, so therefore you just ignore that and still pull traditional data sets? And while we wait for some answers, Mr. Olivia, what is your biggest signal based myth that you've been coming across recently?
That's a great question, honestly. Yeah, I would say usually it gets confused a little bit with, let's say, internal triggers, right? In my opinion, a signal is a combination of circumstances that show you it's the right time to reach out based on what's happening inside a certain company or what a certain person has been talking about, right? It is not, yeah, no longer one circumstance. Somebody posting a job, let's say they're hiring a GTM engineer. Yes, it's a trigger for me to reach out, but does it mean that they are necessarily a good fit with what we offer? No. Does it mean that they want to work with an agency? No. So I should probably go a little bit deeper and look for one or more other things that also need to be true, right? So yeah, for me, one myth has always been that it's confused with a trigger rather than what it is, but there's a lot of education around it lately, so I'm happy to see the myths get busted there.
Yeah, absolutely. The one that I'll try to bust today is the fact that the whole premise of getting ready to buy leads is kind of fluffy bullshit. Excuse me for my language, but
Right.
yeah, I think a lot of people capitalize upon that due to the fact that tracking the whole Customer journey was a little bit simpler than before, and it was really so black and white before. But right now, when it's so commoditized, people still believe those things, but it doesn't really work that much. That puts me very nicely into my next point, which is actually, do you really know your ICP? If you take a look into those two guys, right? Do you really know your ICP? Because the guy on the right is the same age as the guy on the left, but they're hugely different. Do you know why, Olivia?
It's two different people in two different situations, I would say.
Yep. So the guy on the left exited his company to MyFitnessPal for 200 million or something, while the other guy is building a community for clay experts, right? So it's two fundamentally different things, but maybe what's unite them is Tinder or something like this, or having a beer, because that's a
Mhm.
proper targeting for both their interests in that regard. I will give the word to you here quite quickly. What is the difference between signals and intent?
Yeah, I would say, right, when it comes to a new definition of intent or simplified way of putting it is, yeah, as I said already, like an intent, or sorry, a signal is a combination of circumstances or data points that give you the facts, like almost undeniable facts, that your assumptions or hypotheses that you want to have when reaching out or going to the market align with what's going on in that company. Whereas the trigger can be somebody, let's say, somebody is downloading ebook or showing up for your webinar. Once again, the likelihood of someone joining a GTM webinar, being interested in GTM stuff, that's the point, right? Like we already know that much. So we can assume that's ground zero in that sense, right? Does that
Mhm.
mean that they are looking for setting up GTM engineering in their company? They're already doing that, probably.
Yeah.
All we know is it's a signal that they are interested in the topic, but it doesn't mean that they have budget or that they need another tool or all these things. So all this other context is missing from it. So we have a short framework for it where the signal is really a timing specific behavior. It reveals a buying window or a buying window being open at the moment, which means that you now have the context needed in order to do your outreach. And it's not something static, right? So it's not a website visitor, it's not a vendor intent that all your competitors seeing. It's not a G2 list of companies searching for products like yours, because what is that? That's rented data, essentially. So I do not like personally a lot of third-party data from intent
Yeah.
providers, as you already mentioned. So yeah.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting because I do believe that intent and signals have fundamentally different places within the customer journey, right? And we can see this beautiful example from Liam Mulroney, who wanted to purchase Sparktoro. And what we can really quickly see, I wouldn't go that much into the post itself, but the signals most of the time occur top of mind, right? So there are things that sometimes they're very hard to measure, but they can be indicated by one way or another. I've been following around Fishkin for years, so okay, maybe there is a connotation towards purchasing marketing vendors and yada yada until the intent shows up of hey, Liam is on my website. But in order to know whether Liam is ready, you need to being able to know the signals behind it to capture the full context around it, which puts me down the line of hey, how does the whole signal based go to market flow works, and why is it different from just blasting some people? And no matter if you're doing an inbound or outbound, and we'll cover it in a bit because they're fundamentally different playbooks, it always comes down to you needing to discover accounts, right? They either you go to them or they come to you. Then there is a particular interaction in place, and there you try to gather as much contextual pieces as possible in order to make the whole story. And in the end, you are pretty much testing a certain hypothesis that is further validated by your CS teams or product or sales as a whole. But before showing how you can structure it, I feel like it's very important to know that there are three particular type of signals that I have at least identified during my time as a head of marketing, head of growth throughout the ventures and including Signalbase. And this goes around urgency based signals. So this is number one, a type of signal that doesn't occur so often, but once it occurs, you really need to jump on it in order to capitalize on absolutely everything. Then you have evergreen signals, which we're about to cover today in order to help you fill up the pipeline on autopilot. And it's something that recurs quite often, therefore you can scale it. And lastly, we do have the killer, the custom signals, which in this case, I managed to dig in a post about the product roadmap from Lemless, because in case you guys don't know, with Signalbase, we do feed other vendors with our live data. Now, that being said, it's very important to know how to structure absolutely everything and to not be ignorant of what is going on the landscape, because go to market and doing signal based go to market, it's so much more than blasting emails. I do see the comments. Hey, Leandro, absolute pleasure to have you here, man. So, without any further ado, if I want you guys to take something from the session, from whatever, is this exact thing. So, in GTM, we have two motions. We have outbound, meaning you initiate, or inbound, meaning someone else initiate, right? And according to that, you need to be able to craft your motion. So outbound normally is being run for having net new logos, right? Expansion and things like this. People doesn't really know much about you, so you're trying to manufacture a touch point. And that being said, there are two paths that I came across since starting Signalbase. Number one is signal source, and this is exactly what we do. We are giving you accounts that are already having some kind of signal in place, so you can further build context around that with a custom signal and send a message, which just starts the whole journey, right? This is not going to convert probably a lot of people, but it just increases your probability of conversion. And then the second thing is, which I feel like the generally the industry is just used to right now, is having a traditional database with no context, and then you push it to Clay, you enrich it, you layer the custom signal, and then you send it. Now, from November onwards, engagement signal popped out, and people thought that they can have it as the ultimate silver bullet. So this is path number three. And this is where you come across like social media, Reddit, Slack monitoring. You manage to identify the person who it is. And then based on that one, you still need to repeat the whole motion, right? You still need to enrich for context in order to understand their whole company map and layer your custom signal, because that's what makes you unique. This is why someone is looking for a vendor like yourself, and then you send it. Just to give a little bit of kudos to the evergreen players or the evergreen plays, something that I've personally did a lot in the past is going after people who obtain particular certifications, people who created profile views on my profile on LinkedIn. So I just send them a message and then start the whole enrichment flow based on that. Tech stack usage. So if someone is using, let's say, our friends at Salesforce, it's good indication that they might need Signalbase too, competitor engagements and data. So that's everything that I want you guys to know whenever you need to design your outbound motion. Now, whenever we talk about inbound, there are two ways. You either have hand raisers, meaning people that sign up or book a demo, and the follow-up sequence is still the same. You need to enrich, qualify, and then put it into the AE. Or you have the anonymous high intent, which is people checking your ads or coming to your website. So therefore, there is a whole new sequence that you need to make in order to anonymize the account. And I gave a few other always on invites here. So the webinar, yeah, nice. It's a nice touch point, but you, as Olivier mentioned, you still need to do a lot of work. Ultimately, and this is the reason why I'm saying this, I do believe that you need to structure your signal-based go-to-market motion in the same way as your funnel. And in the end, it always comes down to a few other signals, which I won't be covering because this is not like why we are here. But they're like product signals, like inviting teams to the platform. So therefore, there's a high probability of landing and expanding. Stripe signals and any kinds of signals. I feel like the whole industry just absorbed this topic and made some terms. So I'll just leave it as it is. If there are any questions about this, it's a brand new framework that I'm developing, so I'm happy to iterate further with your own knowledge, guys. And it's ultimately for everyone. And I really wanted to make something that is beyond our own capabilities with Signalbase, because I truly believe that the landscape just needs something like this to understand like how to run this. Now, that being said, if you want to learn more about a Signal-based outbound outside of this session, we also run a podcast with some of the leading faces out there. Bill from Sales Captain, we have Spencer, we have Everett from Clay, etc., etc. So do check it out, including this episode. It's going there. So if you want to watch it, make sure to check this. And that is pretty much it. I have a few signal plays, but I'll leave them to the end. From now, I would like to execute another premise to show you how to build a signal-based campaigns on Autopilot with signal-based or without. So that being said, passing it to Olivier.
I want to maybe add to this that, and I think it's quite important that people understand like the like infrastructure or architecture around something like this. So maybe if I share one slide today, it will be just this one.
And Olivier is gone, ladies and gentlemen. We'll wait. In the meantime, hey guys, super nice to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. If there are any questions when it comes to the structuring of how you need to adjust this to your unique use case and the brainstorming manner behind it, do hit me up. But ultimately, for the custom signal that we've been sharing quite a lot, what it's good to know is that it's based around the question of, hey, this person have a problem, right? When do they become aware, number one, of this in order to run it for their whole company? Is this a frequent occurring event, or it's something that it's less frequent, which means that you can you need to accumulate for or account for? An example of this one would be to oh sorry, Olivier needs a link, so I'll just share it with him quite quickly. So yeah, an example of this one would be to, if you're running a signal-based go-to-market motion for your edtech startup. Hey, Olivia, welcome again.
I'm back.
No worries.
Well,
I was just explaining the rules of creating a custom signal. Yeah, if you're running an edtech startup and you know that your custom signal is budget allocation, you know that happens every quarter, once a year. So you need to bank on that custom signal, like trying to find more information around it. That being said, Olivia, welcome back.
let me try again.
No worries. Maybe I'll stop my screen. Yeah,
Okay, I think it works.
perfect.
Amazing. So yeah, as I was saying, I think it's very important before we go into showing you some examples, and I think there's so much being shared right now on high level stuff, how to do things. And I think one of the things that is not spoken of enough is really mapping your market, right? It's one thing to be able to leverage all these data sources to do sourcing of accounts. But what I feel is highly, like to me, especially if you're selling into more mature companies and things like that. Okay, there's every day around, I think worldwide, 30,000 new companies being founded. But if you're selling to established companies, let's say 100 companies or plus, like it's super hard to grow to 100 companies. So first of all, so those don't come around every day, right? They don't grow. This list, like you can kind of create this list initially based on what's relevant for your, what you define as your ISP, and then you have the list, right? And so all the rest that you do from there is layering in and monitoring activities, movement, right? Look at it as some kind of stalking, I would say. Like you're doing research on the actual movements of that company, right?
Yeah.
And so that's super important that you map that out before you start building signals, I would say.
Yeah, certainly. Someone asked us, I think, asked us whether we can show a practical clay workflow. Yes, we're switching to it, I think, in a second or something. Olivia, did you have anything else actually to add here?
That's the most important thing that I wanted to say. If you're going to be looking at your signals, you want to mainly focus on the custom ones and leverage some granular data that helps you build this in actual hypothesis and allows you to fine tune your model and maybe segment, etc.
Nice stuff. All right, sweet. I think it's time to give the people some practical examples. That being said, I do have a few pre-built one, Oliver, if you need a little bit more time to sharpen yours or you're ready to fly.
Just showing a workflow, we can definitely do that in Clay. I got quite a lot, but yeah, what specifically do they want to see? You can definitely show one example of how to leverage Signalbase in Clay,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah,
Then I
cool.
can show how to use the MCP for the initial sourcing, for example.
Good. All right, cool. So I will be really quickly sharing my screen again, guys. Okay, cool. So for those of you who doesn't know, what we do with Signalbase is a real-time infrastructure for signals that not doesn't only sources but also verifies and conceptualize absolutely everything into these complete company profiles that give you funding data, people level data. We also stack job changes and hiring signals for you. So as with headcounts, so one credit equals to this complete data. And there was someone that asked me, "Hey Georgie, how would you do that if you have a SEO vendor? Or how would you do that if you're targeting someone that have ads in place?" Now, genuinely speaking, this is a my way of building signal-based outbound engines whenever it comes to the evergreen side. What I always do is I try to pick up a signal that is evergreen, right? Because this allocates the ability to see that this particular profile has budget right now because they're either hiring or going to hire or they just hired or they have funding, right? So all of these hypotheses. Then based on that, what I simply do when I layer down the filters, and Oliver is going to showcase that too, but I simply build some kind of filters from the left or via the MCP. And then from here, I just create a webhook, right? And I can select whether I want all of them or I want dedicated events. Once a webhook is built, I just go to Clay, push it here. And then here is where the real job starts because it's not hard to build your evergreen play. It's hard just to know your custom signal because by the time you know it and you know it's proven to be working, then you can scale it further. Now, as mentioned, the use case is the following. We wanted to have a recently funded company or a company that had an M&A behind it. You can choose whatever signal we want. In this case, we went after acquisition because of the fact that the hypothesis here is that they're going to have a lot of restrictions, right? They're going to change their entire content marketing strategy. They're going to change a lot of stuff. But when you're understanding that this company needs to make changes, for if you're an SEO vendor, you might want to understand how many office locations they have, because how many office locations have is a direct correlation to how many markets do they operate in, right? And if they have multiple markets that are in different languages, that's a money making move for a SEO vendor because you can pitch them with, hey, like you have an office in France, maybe there is a further custom signal that you layer on top saying that their presence is not the strongest and the secondary custom signal needs to come from your vendors, right? And then you pitch them, hey, your presence in the French market is not the greatest. I noticed that you also have 10 other offices in that location. So I can create an evergreen flow based around that. And it's cool because if you really want to automate this, then you can just plug like some like Signalbase, then you have Clay to run on a proper setup, and then you have another connector or sequencer like a Salesforce or Lemless or whatever you want in Clay. So in that case, it acts like a AI SDR that everyone is hyping about. And there are a lot of, truthfully, like there are a lot of agencies that run this as a productionized service. So there you have it. This is how you would run it. Extremely simple. It doesn't take so much time. All you need to know is, does it make sense, right? After knowing that this person having budget in place. Before giving it to Olivia, I'll just share another quick example. And this was something that someone pitched me. It was for boosting our ads presence. But again, I didn't have the budget in place to run ads. So that being said, the workflow would be very much the same, but the difference is going to be whether someone is looking to hire a head of performance, if they already have head of performance, but they just raised, if they are having a new performance marketer or growth marketer in there, and therefore you can connect two and two with the custom signal being appointed to the LinkedIn Ad Manager. So for those of you who don't know, if you go to LinkedIn and let's say Signalbase, really quickly, sorry, I'll close this one. And if you go to posts, actually, Olivia, do you run any ads?
No.
Okay, yeah, maybe it wouldn't show then. But yeah, there is a button here that you can check if someone runs any particular ads. And if they do run it, that's your custom signal, right? The more ads they run, the heavier ad spend they have. So that's how you make your evergreen campaigns with Signalbase. Cool. That was it on my side. Olivia, it's time to shine.
Uh, let's hope it doesn't break. Here we go again, trying to share.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
sweet.
All right. So basically, and yeah, for everyone in the audience, you can just ask what you want to see. I can probably look for something already built. But I just want to come back to the original case of, imagine one day you wake up and you're like, let me test this, right? So imagine you say, okay, I'm going to go after Series A to Series C tech companies based in the US that have more than whatever amount of employees, right? And what you want to do here is, okay, this is a webhook that we set up from Signalbase. And so we get this data based on just an idea, just a thought, right? Instead of having to look it up in your existing database to begin with, right? But you could match both. So you could do the lookup here and look for database that you already have and see if there's a match, right? This now gives you two interesting opportunities. The first one is to see if you have more information there that could be relevant to the campaign you want to run. And the second thing could be potentially from here, from this fresh pool, you can update information and imagine that you have the employee count already. If there's a match and yeah, the employee count is different, then you can already have the assumption, okay, they're growing, right? So it essentially gives you other data points, right? And so from this list of companies that we now know they have raised a Series A to Series C, are based in the US and meet whatever employee criteria that I have, you can, and this is another list, but you can set up signals like looking for their active posts, right? You can also look if they have any job changes or any people new enroll, right? So those would be some fairly basic signals that you can just set up, right? So if we want to say, okay, let's see if they have any open jobs at the moment, right? And maybe we want to check if they have anything related to sales, BDR, SDR, growth, CTM, marketing, whatever, right? And just like that, you can add another event to the list that will give you more information. Like here, for example, founding GTM engineer just raised 10 million. Now we have 1 plus 2 plus whatever else we can essentially add as context, right?
Yeah, certainly. And again, it's always like treating signals as contextual pieces, which further down the line just need to be applied to a custom signal for you to know when to reach out and whether this company is particularly reach outable, if I can say it like this. Something super cool, by the way. I don't know if Oliver have it running in Cloud Code, but the MCP of Signalbase also stacks signals quite nicely. So if you ask it
Yep.
for, hey, here companies that raised and also are having X, Y, and Z job change, it's going to do the work for you. But I'll leave that to maybe Olivier because he's showing.
Yeah, no, I just was playing around with it. I like, again, I think when you build a list from scratch, what Signal tools allow you to do is have this recreate this situational profile, right? Which in this case, it's a series of events. So we want to look for B2B tech companies based in Eastern US that have done a series A, B, or C, are currently hiring for growth roles and have shown changes in sales leadership. And then essentially it does all these things which you would have had to engineer yourself in Play, tying together all these different tools. It now does all these things kind of in the back end. And obviously I had to press enter a few times here. But yeah, we can see here, for example, bam, this company, Glimpse, is pretty much the best match based on the criteria. And you get another.
Like a few other companies, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. I wonder if there are any, you guys asked for a few workflows, but what are some of the workflows that you're running? What is something that you see that perhaps on Autopilot is working? Because we have, I think, 15 minutes left or something, or we said the session is going to be 4 or 5 minutes. Both is fine. But yeah, I do want to leave some opportunity for Q&A if you guys have something in mind. If not, or at least while we wait for it, Olivia, what is like when you design these evergreen plays? Do you structure some layers on top of it, or how do you see that revenue distribution goes according to it? Is it 20%, 30% of the revenue from some of the clients that you have? Like, how does that work for you?
Are clients getting revenue from Signalbase or us getting
Like
revenue?
with the evergreen campaigns, because you do showcase a few other workbooks
Yeah.
from some clients. I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
yeah.
Yeah.
In most cases, like especially when it comes to tools and software, and then more specifically in, let's say, software that is easy to change, easy to implement and adopt, marketing tools, sales tools, HR tools, things like that, right? I'm not speaking about HRIS systems for Microsoft as a company or something like that. I'm speaking about, yeah, up to mid-market, or let's say just like a tool like Signalbase or a tool like Play or a tool like whatever that you can essentially play around with before having to commit and things like that. In 90% of the cases, when we analyze our customers and we get all the context that is in their CRM on what happened on that account and why they bought, it is very interesting that lately, when we have our own kind of tool built to help us onboard customers, it tells us that once again, most of the companies that came, whether it's outbound or inbound, there's always a change in either a change in leadership happening or that there's a new person coming in, right? And this new person coming in might have inherited an existing project already that got kind of stalled because this person that was project owner is leaving or things like that, right?
Super solid, super solid. I have to say, we did some tests with a few customers, and including myself. What we did is that we ran a two-way sequence on the job changes signal. So it's very nice that you hit up the new person saying, "Hey, you have a new job. All right, how does that look like? Like, how is your boarding plan being handled and things like this?" But what indeed people miss is hitting the alt company and be like, hey, this person left. Do you have a gap that I can fulfill or things like this? Maybe this person finally left so I can cut the workforce with our solution if it's really breaching
Yeah,
productivity and you don't need someone to handle it and things like this.
yeah.
Yeah. So
You can do
that's
a lot of fun things here, and what we have seen and have been like recently, which was an unlock, is when we do this analysis, and you can also just do this by asking your
mhm.
customers, is to go a little bit deeper on why or when, right, is a good time when someone is new in the role. For sales, it's around the 3 month mark. If it's 6 months or later, you're too late. But if it's before the 3 months, you're too early.
Yeah.
And for HR, it's more 6 months or things like that. That has been an unlock for us to have these hypotheses on when the timing would be right and then changing the messaging based on that. I
Yeah,
saw a question here.
this
What's
one.
the workflow you recommend? The workflow for
I
signal-based
think,
outbound or
yeah, in general, there are no silver bullets, right? And this is the reason why I keep on saying the formula to success based on everything what I've been doing. And we book demos with a few CEOs of companies that are 12 figures in revenue plus. So very serious enterprise level players. Initially, what Olivier said is the right thing. It always starts from having an evergreen signal, right? So the formula is always what is something that changes within their buyer committee or whatever you want to call it that will shift absolutely everything. I can give a another example in a second, but no, actually I will go with the example. Oh, Olivier left again. Okay, so I will go with the example. I booked a demo where the previous chief product officer left, the previous head of marketing left. The guys initially I was already targeting them, and what occurred was that this account changed their branding. So I was like, oh, there is a big change coming. Then, on top of the evergreen signals that I already mentioned, they hired a new CTPO and a new CTO. So you're already saying, oh, okay, there are a lot of things happening, but those are only evergreen signals, right? And then based on that, I put my custom signal in place, and that's how I managed to book a demo with the CTO. And now we're 6 months ahead of their buyer's journey. So the
yeah.
CTO jumped on a call and pretty much said, "Hey Georgie, this is amazing, but we're 6 months before we even thinking of buying something else." So just to answer one last time the question, secret formula is evergreen signal plus custom signal that is very much tailored to your own unique use case. In my case, I can give you guys example because now that you know that we feed vendors, I'm looking for databases. So if there is a database that needs refreshment, I'm there. That's pretty
Yeah.
much it. Or if there is a AI contextualization model that needs to be refreshed with the reasoning models, that's my own custom signal. But it can be something
Uh,
else. It entirely depends on your own sake. There's another question, by the way.
100%. And intent data. Are we treating AI outbound and intent data as two separate buckets, or are we using AI outbound to create the very signals our intent tools are looking for? Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? Who
For
gets
me,
the
it's different.
attribution, Georgie, if you outbound at the same time that a demo form gets filled in? Yeah. But
Yeah,
actually, it was a Slack conversation that made them sign up. No, it's an interesting one. That's why I really personally don't believe so much in, or didn't believe so much in this whole outbound, inbound, outbound BS. Let's call it what it is. Because someone visiting your website doesn't mean anything else besides that they're visiting your website. They clicked on a link and now they're on your website, and they probably dropped within 3 seconds, and that's it.
yeah. Is it actually a question of whether we should continue attributing it in the way it is? Because what you cannot attribute so much anymore is brand outside of being able to know, oh, okay, yeah, someone came in via search. Cool, yeah, nice. The last piece of the pie is there. But I feel like the
Yeah,
continued efforts that occur are very important. So maybe we need to reframe like how we structure absolutely everything towards our KPIs.
yeah. I think maybe to answer the whole running signal-based outbound on Autopilot, and to go back to Isabel's question and also maybe tackle Leandro's, I'll try to do it all in one thing, like the workflow, right? So if you have limited resources and you're doing this yourself, this is exactly what I would do, right? So I would build a lookalike audience from my recent closed won accounts, and I would, if you have that data, segment on profitability as the number one metric. So profitability, or your best customers are always the ones that spend the most for the least amount of effort. Yeah, because this gives you runway as a company, especially if you're bootstrapped, but even if you're VC, it creates cash efficiency, which creates growth opportunities for when stuff hits the fan, or if you go bankrupt with money in your pockets, essentially, right?
Oh, that's a big one. Sorry, do you want to finish what you said or
Yeah, I'll come back to that one
for sure?
because it
Go.
might be handled with what I'm about to say, right? So
Mhm.
now you have your lookalike audience, which is kind of, oh, they're good customers. Let's see if we can replicate the same situation, right? And that's exactly what that signal would be. It's like based on timing. So it's the right time, right? It's the right message at the right time, basically. And how do you get there? It's not by one thing. It's not by one intent. It's not by clicking on an ad just alone, right? Maybe if you're high volume, low ticket, vertical SaaS, it can be just one thing. It can be just clicking on an ad, you follow up, you'll book meetings, you'll close deals. But for most of us, it's not like that. For most of us, you need three kind of indicators or three different kinds of events, which is first of all the leading indicator. This is the main one. It's basically shows you right now. It shows you urgency, right? Open jobs, specific tools mentioned, LinkedIn post, things like that, right? And then it can be a trigger event like funding, right? Or there's a new CEO 3 months ago or 6 months ago, or they acquired someone, or they merged, or they launched a new product. And then it's something structural or lagging. It's can show you that they are doing well, right? There's budget, but it might have nothing to do with your company or the reason why you're reaching out. You're trying to just look for qualifiers before talking to them, just by doing research, essentially. And then this is what Georgie was referring to as custom signal, right? This is what we call deep signals, which is basically the combination of these with some kind of logic behind it, right? Taking into account also the date of these events, right? And then basically that gives you your go-to-market alpha, right? And how do you get there? There's no silver bullet, as has been said here. You just need to test and test relentlessly, right? It starts with creativity ideas that you get out of sales calls, out of talking to people, out of just thinking about your market, about why you are different, about what your customers are missing at other companies, things like that. And then just executing at a relatively smaller scale, then see, okay, if I run this, if I'm particularly and I'm tracking what works, can I scale it?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
would say that's the workflow I would recommend. And it is not a one clay table or one clay workbook. If you would look at what I think is a good clay architecture, there's at least 15 tables, and you have your TAM, your ICP, and all that stuff. Maybe we can cover that in another webinar, or I'll make a YouTube video about it. But yeah, that's the thing. So I'm not sure if I covered here Alejandro's question, the latest one.
Yeah, we'll showcase it in a second. Just also, what's the best workflow? The best workflow is the one that fits your go-to-market system. And I showcased a little bit earlier the different ways of how you can structure, whether you're inbound heavy or outbound heavy. So it really depends, right? And this is the reason why it's so important to structure absolutely everything according to your go-to-market, your ACV and
Yeah,
go-to-market strategy as a whole. Because so many people, sorry guys, the reason why I'm bringing it up so much is because people are saying, oh, yeah, engagement signal works right now and this works right now. But the truth is that it will work if it's in combination and it's unique to you.
yeah,
Okay.
100%. I can take this one. I think I have a good example and great question, actually, Leandro. Thanks a lot for asking it, because you're absolutely right. Most companies are not lucky enough to have brand awareness, right? Outbound can be a play of brand awareness. Be a little bit cautious here, because if you're spray and praying, it will most likely not have the best brand awareness. But hey, some of the biggest entrepreneurs say there's no such thing as bad marketing. Under that paradigm, we shall continue. So,
Yeah.
that being said, I would say the results on LinkedIn about outbound, like conversion or reply rates, 1 to 5%, is pretty much the norm. People saying we got 100 leads, but they sent to 250,000 people. That's basically what happens if you have zero brand awareness, but also if you're in a saturated market. So I think intent means they're looking for us, not necessarily. Intent means that they are showing interest in the solution and problem that you are addressing, right? Doesn't mean they're specifically looking for you as a company. So I think that's where you could combine intent and trigger and have a signal, right? Which, for example, there's a VP of marketing saying, this is my demand generation strategy, blah, blah, blah. Based on that, you're able, which is the trigger, to already predict he will run into, or this person will run into certain pain points, which is basically a gap because he has just you just saw the dream state, and now you have identified a gap based on your market experience, right? So now you can bridge that gap and consider it a signal by reaching out and saying, hey, saw your post, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah. As the
So
marketer in the room, I can say that, especially because if you're a BDR or SDR, it's very nice to ask the person, hey, like, obviously we've been in touch for quite some time. Why now? What from everything that happened occurred? Was it my message? Because sometimes people will drop for 2 to 3 weeks, then you send them a follow up and then they book it. Obviously, they were slammed. So what does that mean? Your message gets the a little bit more juice, but that doesn't mean that you need to decrease the power of the rest of the things. So attribution and self attribution has multiple lenses.
yeah.
And it's interesting, by the way, how you see that question because I saw it in another way around. So really quickly, even if someone, because intent also has levels to it, right? Is it intent, overall interest in the topic of signals? That is Reddit, right? Is it intent of going to the case studies page on Sales Captain's website? Because then that's very much interesting. They're like directly interested in particular services, or they go to Outbound Catalyst, right? Because Olivier is also kicking ass in that regard. So yeah, I think there are levels, and you just need to be able to wait it out accordingly with a realistic view on, hey, this is this, not with too dark glasses or too bright glasses. I feel like.
Yeah. And what's gonna win when there's zero brand awareness? Cold calling, maybe to address
Yeah,
that in a very direct way. Because, like, when it comes to go to market, and maybe this is a little bit off topic, but once again, it can be relevant to the extent of signal based. If it's signal based, but you're reaching out to them, it's still cold outbound, right? There's zero
yeah,
proof that they know about you, and people still buy from people. So you will have to build that relationship starting from scratch. It's I hate it when I speak to people who are like, yeah, we just want to like we want more revenue, right? I used to be a fractional sales guy, and they used to hire me to close deals, but they didn't have any pipeline, right? And then they're like, how much revenue can you bring us in 6 months? And I'm like, okay, what's in the pipeline? And they're like, nothing. I'm like, okay, what's your average deal cycle? 9 months. Then I'll probably bring you nothing in the next 6 months. What do you
Jesus.
expect? So
Wow.
that's the point. There's so much misalignment on those things. So long answer to basically say creativity will win, right? So you being able to create demand, because those are, like, in my opinion, the two main motions, because inbound and outbound, that's channels, but two main motions are demand generation and demand capture, and signals
Yeah,
are to capture what's being generated, whether it's by you or your competitors. And that all depends on how many resources you have. But, and this is maybe weird, but I really believe, and it's more and more visible, at the end of the day, those who master the demand generation will win, because the ones who need to capture are always running behind the fact, because the one who generates the demand is holding the narrative. They are influencing how the buyers are looking for things, right? So
so
if
true.
I'm Clay and I call what back in Georgie and my time was called a growth hacker, a GTM engineer, and they're able to create over 250 jobs with that title, then I think they're doing something right. And if then 2 weeks later LinkedIn is full of cloud code will replace Clay, they couldn't care less. They're growing. They don't care about certain type of users. And that's also very strategic again, right? Because if Varun makes a post, he has hundred thousands of views and probably 50 to 60 demos just off of that. And so they can post whatever, like it's a video of them going to give meals on Thanksgiving, or it's them doing whatever. It doesn't matter, they'll win in the long run because they control the narrative. So I would say you need to control the narrative, and whether you do that through aggressive outbound and picking up the phone and getting in conversations, or to showing up at the events where your competitor has the biggest booth and just infiltrating that booth, trying to snatch people with whatever you can think of. That's where creativity comes in, and that's where it cannot be like, if you're copying what others are doing, you're not going to win. It's as simple as
For
that.
sure. For sure. Wow. Okay. What a fruitful conversation. I think we're down the line to close the session for today, guys. But honestly, this was beyond actually pleasing to see that there are people who are interested in the topic and they do want to ask some questions. So it's always nice. Thank you guys for that. If you want to learn more about GTM as a whole, Olivier is a great person to work with. Can recommend him with my two hands. And if you want to build, signal-based outbound flows or give your data layers or agents more context, you know where to find us at trysignalbase.com. And that being said, I hope we managed to really, at least a tiny bit, change your perspective upon why context is the new mode for outbound or go to market as a whole. And there are a few other sessions really quickly that I do want to share that are coming, at least from my side. Olivier, if you have something on your side, do share really quickly. Okay, cool. But on my side, and very quickly to show a few other use cases. So a few Clay Bootcamp mentors use Signalbase in order to create ABM campaigns. This is posted on YouTube on Signalbase, so you can check it out. Dana is a great guy. Then we also have Francesco, who discovered 7.5 billion acquisition while he sleeps. At least his agent did that with Signalbase, Notion, and Clay. So make sure to check out the podcast with Francesco. That was great also. And if you want to hear more about me talking for signals and context and all of these things, we have a few cool sessions coming and podcasts included. So more on that will follow shortly. Thank you, peeps.
Thanks for having
Yes.
us, and see you in the next one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Have a good one, everyone.